Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Good afternoon and welcome to In Session. I'm your host, Dr. Farid Holakouee, and I'll be with you for the next 2 hours here on Radio Hamra. Studio number to call in, 310-441-0555. But if you do call in, you're very lucky because you'll get to talk to my special guest today, who needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway. Maz Jobrani is here today to promote his movie, A Simple Wedding, which I got to see and really enjoyed 2 weeks ago. And it's still playing in some theaters, and we'll talk about how you can see it. But if you want to get more information, you can go to asimplewedding.movie for more information. But let me bring you on, Maz. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Farid. I got to say, your intro music sounds like Game of Thrones.
It's very intense. You'd think I'd be doing something much more intense than what's going on. No dragons, no...
I love it.
Yeah.
You should bring a dragon in here and talk to them.
Although I do joke because I like the studio very cool, so sometimes I say winter is coming when I play the studio, but other than that, it's not that dramatic.
You are Jon Snow.
I've actually never seen an episode in my life.
Oh, really?
I just know some of the references. It's like one of the best shows.
It was great. It was a great show. Yeah.
Speaking of great movies or shows, we're here to talk about A Simple Wedding.
Yes.
Which I mentioned is a hilarious movie. We might do some spoilers, obviously, today.
Sure.
But we'll talk about it a bit, but I'll let you share what you want to share about it. But as I mentioned, people can get more information if you want to see it at asimplewedding.movie. You can see it in theaters in selected cities, but also online on Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maz, what can you tell us about
the movie A Simple Wedding is a movie. It came out a couple weeks ago. It came out on Valentine's Day, and it was written by a young writer-director named Sara Zandieh. Sara is this great, very smart girl, and I first met Sara. She was at the University of Columbia film program, and she put me in a short film of hers, and that short film won some prizes, won some awards. So then she went on and did I believe this is her first feature film called A Simple Wedding, and she has Tara Gerami in there. Some of your listeners might know Tara from the spoof she put out called The Persian Bachelorette, which was a spoof on the Bachelorette shows. So Tara is this very talented comedic actress, and so this is her first starring role. So Tara's the star. Her co-star is a guy named Chris O'Shea. She plays obviously an Iranian American, and Chris is playing an American, and they quickly try to plan a wedding and get married. And Tara's parents are Shohreh Dashlu and Hushang Tozi, who do a wonderful job.
They're so funny, yeah.
And so the whole story is just her parents pushing her into a wedding and then her having second thoughts. Meanwhile, I'm her uncle who's come from Iran, this uncle named Saman, who's come from Iran. And, we have a good relationship. And then Chris O'Shea's mother is played by Rita Wilson, who is Tom Hanks's real-life wife. And everybody knows Rita Wilson anyway. But Rita was one of the producers of Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Right.
And so I believe she had wanted to work with Shohreh in something, and she found this, and she felt that it was a good, romantic comedy. It's a very light movie. I think if people go see it, they'll enjoy it. It's probably a light we're not seeing in a lot. If you let people that aren't from the community tell your stories, then they'll want to tell stories of terrorists and tyrants. But if you get people from the community telling their stories, then you get a lot of different flavors that you wouldn't normally get.
Yeah, and we hear a lot about representation and how important that is. And it was really cool for me to be in the theater and watch a romantic comedy that was around Iranian American family. It was just really cool experience to have that and to be in a theater with people and laughing, and it's really nice. You do see that it has an impact, and like you said, when people tell their own stories, it's very different than when it's told by others, where usually it's more the stereotypes, and it perpetuates, unfortunately, more racism rather than humanizing the whatever the group is that we're talking
Absolutely.
about.
And listen, there's some people that are going to see the movie and say like, oh, the parents were overbearing or whatever. There was certain things in there that are stereotypical. Well, a lot of the stereotypical stuff that's coming into a movie like this might come actually from people's firsthand experiences. So I'm sure when you have these Iranian parents who are pushing their daughter to get married, that's a story we know very well.
Absolutely.
So it's good. It's good to bring that to light. And I think, I went and enjoyed it the first night with some people in Beverly Hills, and it seemed like it got a good reception. People were laughing. They were enjoying it. It's a good romantic comedy. So husbands and wives can go together. Wives and wives can go together. Husbands and husbands can go together. We have no judgment here. Just go check it out. Go see the movie.
And actually, speaking of the husbands and wives, there's an interesting, if you want to call it, twist, because maybe people wouldn't expect this in an Iranian American environment. It does add some complexity to the situation that Christopher O'Shea, who plays Tara Grammy's main love interest, is bisexual. And so that also, I thought that was great to introduce that, because in society in general, but also in Iranian culture, we do struggle with these issues.
Absolutely. And also, don't forget that his father in the movie, played by Peter Mackenzie, is remarried to another man. So there's a lot of complexities going on. And I applaud Sarah for Sarah Zandia for bringing all these things into the movie. Because as you said, I think sometimes our community struggles with things that maybe the people that are second and third generation who've been here longer are accepting, but the parents and our grandparents still don't. And there's a certain level of, whether you like it or not, you got to get with it. I mean, this is just what the world is. So stop fighting it and accept it. I mean, we're going to have people from all different sexualities. We're going to have people from all different even when it comes to marriage, some people are going to say, I never want to get married, and we still have the traditional thought process of, no, you have to get married. No, not really. You don't have to.
Yeah. And like you said before, how, of course, there's the stereotypes that are in the movie as well, but it's always a delicate balance when you talk about something like this, but stereotypes often come from places of truth as well. And so as a therapist dealing with a lot of Iranians, I see those exact issues all the time of overbearing parents, too much dependency, pressure to get married. All those types of things are very true in our community, so we have to talk about them too.
Yeah, I think in art, when you're writing a movie or when you're doing comedy or you're doing anything, as long as you're coming from a truthful place of yours, and then you're taking it and exaggerating and having fun with it,
right?
As long as it's grounded in that reality, then I think it's fine. I think that's where I feel I wish we had more chances to tell our stories of whether it's overbearing parents wanting you to get married or wanting you to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or some of the stuff you see in our community between men and women and the way they feel that women should be second-class citizens or whatever. I wish more of that stuff could come to the front, and that I'm starting to see more and more of that in our there's more and more Iranian American writers, directors, performers, and I think it takes a few generations for immigrants to come and then their kids start doing these things.
Right.
And the more we're telling these stories, the more that we're going to, I think, be able to see complexities in our community. Because otherwise, if we just leave it up to non-Iranians to tell our stories, again, it's just going to go back to like, oh, this guy is... the story's about a guy who's gonna, trying to hijack something, and it's like, no, that's not what I've never met any of that guy ever.
That's kind of funny. I've never met an Iranian terrorist in my life, but that's all you'll see in the movies. And so again, it's humanizing people means like they have, they worry about things. There's family struggles and dynamics, internal struggles, intergenerational conflicts that every culture and every group has, but they can be a little bit different in different cultures.
Also now that I think about it, I think Iranian cinema itself has done a good job with that, whether it was Asghar Farhadi's Separation, which won that award a few years ago. And the story was this guy trying to, get through his life and take care of his sick father, Or I happened to be on a Turkish flight last year, and there was a movie called Tehran City of Love that was a really good movie out of Iran. And I haven't seen it here, but I love it because I think that in our community, I'm always struck at how much talent is out there. There really is. Like whether it comes to design or it comes to filmmaking or whatever, I think Iranians excel in the arts. As far as I know, and I'm always introduced. From time to time, someone will introduce me to somebody new, and quite often it's somebody out of Iran who's not even allowed to do the things they're doing. And it touches my heart to see that we have this artistic side in us. And unfortunately, like I said, those in Iran have less ability to express it. And now we're seeing those outside of Iran express it more and more, So I'm running across a lot of young filmmakers, some of them half-breeds who are putting out these films and making these films, and it's a great thing to see.
And yeah, I think every walk of life that you can think of, there are talented people. And unfortunately, what we've seen throughout history is not everyone has gotten a chance to express their art or for their art to be seen. And so the more we allow people to express that, the more we'll see there's these untapped resources of beautiful art that we're not allowing to get out, even not just art, but even in the educational system, not to shift it too much. But of course, there's smart people in every type of background, but if they're not given the resources to be educated, we're then deprived of the good that they can contribute.
Listen, I think art, sports, all that music brings out the part of our lives that we, unfortunately, traditional thought processes try to clamp down on. Don't laugh. Don't question authority. Don't maskhare nakon. Don't make fun of that person. Matter of fact, it was kind of funny. Recently, I was in Atlanta doing a show in the club. It's called Punchline, and the room was filled with all kinds of people: American, Iranian, Arabs, Indian, you name it. They were there. And to my right, there was this older Iranian lady who was probably I'm going to say in her later 60s, maybe early 70s. And she looked very modern, and she was watching and she was, laughing from time to time. And then at one point I got to this whole part where I was making, talking about being a kid and how my dad would, it was your father when you're a kid of immigrants in America. When your immigrant parents come to school, it's embarrassing because they have an accent and you're trying to blend in with all the American kids. And that was my point of view as a kid. So I was doing those bits about my dad coming to school and being loud, and I'm in the corner going oh no. And he's like, thank you for having us here today at your school. And again, it's all exaggerated, but it's just how I see the world at that point. But it was funny because as I was doing it, then I heard her under her breath. She's like, okay, that's enough. Don't make fun of your father anymore. And I was like, what? She's like, I was like, who are you? And it was so funny because this voice has been in my head since I was a child. It's a beautiful thing in our culture where they say respect your elders. But when they say don't criticize or don't talk about your elders, because then you're going to hide your feelings.
Exactly.
So when at some point in my stand-up, I was able to start talking about my family. It's kind of therapeutic and then at one point I remember my friend had his mom, who was like my mom's age, come see the show, and I ended up accidentally cussing. I said some bad words and I felt bad. I was like, oh, Babashid, I'm so sorry. And she was laughing. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I'm an adult. I can cuss.
Right.
So as I've gone through all this stuff, now I'm at a point where I'm very comfortable with what I'm saying and doing. So it's just funny to me when somebody that's older is judging me, telling me not to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference between what art does, is to push you forward and say, let's talk about things and let me express myself, and the traditional thought process, which is don't.
Right. And, so art is obviously about expression, creativity, and there has to be a level of openness. But what you're talking about, it's so interesting, is this the respect, quote unquote. But a lot of times with respect, when they say it in that way, it's more about fear, meaning you just have to fear them. You can't do certain things no matter what. And that's always going to get in the way. And it's kind of like not to get too psychological, but internalize the super ego, right? That part of ourselves that's critical, that even still yourself, you're trying to talk, but you're like, oh, I did something bad, because it was kind of funny being like a mom being there made you even trigger more that super ego side where I'm not supposed to say bad words. Whereas usually I'm sure you're on stage and bad words come out and you don't think twice. But there it was where it's like, I'm being bad right now.
Yeah, and it was funny because when that lady in Atlanta said that, I kept talking about it. I go, it's funny. I've spent 40 years of my life trying to get away from my parents, finally got them off my shoulder, and now this lady's here representing my parents. I go, did they send you? Who are you? And it was funny because when you turn it on them, I think that they see how ridiculous their judgment of you was, and the crowd is laughing at this situation. And I hope that they realize that it's, that we are at a certain point, we're adults.
Yeah.
So, it's like I'm almost 50 years old, so I should be able to say what I want, and just be myself.
And that's the amazing thing of how powerful, it's funny. People laugh at therapists, like everything's about your mom and your dad, but we internalize that parent. So your parents could be, people have parents who are no longer even alive, but they have that voice in their head of their parents. And that's, we can call it the superego, call it different things, where they're still judging themselves. You shouldn't do this, you should do that. So you can be away from them, but we internalize that. And so it does show us how much our parents, and for parents who are having their kids now, be aware of the restrictions you might be setting into them that might be limiting them, not actually helping them grow or protecting them the way you might think it's doing. But yeah, you could be 50 years old. I have clients who are 56 years old. They're still talking about things. I know this is wrong because they remember their mom one time saying they shouldn't be this, or this is a bad girl or a bad boy.
Yeah.
And they still can't turn that off.
It's amazing because, as you say, I totally believe in all that stuff. You can track it all back to when you were a kid, and then I sometimes catch myself. I think that we end up, if you're someone who is pretty responsible, generally speaking, I think that you tend to continue to do the restrictions on your kids. Don't do this, don't touch that, don't do this, don't do that. And I'm trying as much as I can to remind myself to not do that. Let them make a mistake. Let them learn from their mistake. And also I'm trying to reiterate to them, like, for example, my son had left his binder at school and he was worried about it. And I said, well, you're going to have to deal with it tomorrow. And that's it. And that's part of life. I'm not going to go fix your problem for you. Because I think that we do that. Obviously, the world today a lot, our community a lot. The whole thing of like, oh my God, let me bail my kid out again of this, that. Because the problem I think what's going to happen is then they're going to go to college, and something's going to go wrong, and they're not going to know how to deal with it.
Right.
Yeah,
and I sometimes will call it the pain prevention philosophy of parenting, where some parents just think my job is to make sure my kid doesn't feel anything bad. Oh, you don't like that? I'm going to get in the way and stop it. You didn't do your homework? I'll do it for you, and so you have it tomorrow, and you won't have to be sad. And it's taking away their opportunities for growth, and as you're saying, their opportunity to face consequences, to see, okay, when I do this, this happens. When I don't do this, this happens, and so I'm going to be responsible for my actions. And yeah, who cares about their homework in second grade, really? But it's about learning when the stakes get higher in their life that they know how to handle situations, recognize my actions have consequences. If things go wrong, I can handle it.
Yeah.
And not just, we think we're supposed to protect them because we think the only goal is to prevent pain. But that's not what you're supposed to do as a parent. You're actually supposed to promote growth, which means allowing for that.
Yeah.
Maybe we can go to a commercial break.
Sure.
We're a little bit over, but we're here not talking much about the movie, but we're also talking about A Simple Wedding, which you can see online or in certain cities. You can go to asimplewedding.movie to check it out. My guest today, Maz Jobrani. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm joined again today by Maz Jobrani. We're talking about A Simple Wedding, which is out in some select theaters now, but also available online on Amazon Prime. But you can go to asimplewedding.movie to get more information. And so we were talking about the movie, and it is great to see Iranian Americans on the screen, seeing the different issues that come up. Because really, in a short movie, so many different things come up, from marrying outside of the culture, marrying outside of the religion, career choices that are acceptable, not acceptable, all sorts of things, sexuality, all these things come up in this. I thought it was great that, she was able to pack that all in writing the movie.
Yeah, again, Sarah is the real deal. She went to grad school at Columbia for film school, and she's done a few films that are, like I said, have won some awards, and now she's gotten into directing some TV shows. There's that TV show Good Girls, which is an NBC show with these girls. I think they're robbing a bank or something. I actually haven't watched it, but I've seen the trailers for it. She's just directed an episode of that. So that's a big deal for someone to come into this world. So she is the real deal, and I think she did a great job with this movie. And I hope if people get a chance, they go see it in the theaters. The more we support filmmakers like that, whether it's in the theaters or through Amazon Prime or whatever, the numbers matter. So people always say, why don't we have our own Big Fat Greek Wedding? Why don't we have a Crazy Rich Asians? Well, this is your chance to either have something like that or at least work towards it. So the more we support young artists and we go see their movies and we tell our friends and we take our friends and buy those tickets, the more likely that those movies will expand. And the next time a movie is going to be made about our community, you can go to a bigger film production company and say, hey, this film was made for very little and made a lot of money. Why don't you get involved and help us, go even beyond?
Yeah.
So that's something that, the community can do if they want to help support. Just go see it or watch it on Amazon Prime or go see it this weekend. It's still playing in Beverly Hills, Encino, several places.
Yeah, Beverly Hills, Encino, Santa Ana, La Jolla, and also Great Neck, New York. You can go to asimplewedding.movie to get those details. But I hope people will check it out. I went. It was so much fun. The theater was packed. And it was interesting just see, you also hearing the commentary in the audience at certain moments. There are some love or sex scenes that come up or start some.
Yes.
I don't want people to get. Some people are already getting worried taking
Yeah.
their younger kids, but it's all. I think it's PG.
Probably PG-13. Yeah, there's no actual.
Oh, there's actually, yeah, but probably I'd say it's
Yeah.
PG-13.
Yeah.
And hearing some murmurs of the crowd of like that, and making some comments, it was kind of interesting. But it was just very cool to have that experience of having an Iranian American love story, and like you said, a lot of connections I've even seen online are made with My Big Fat Greek Wedding from just the overall theme of the movie and how it goes, but also because Rita Wilson was, as you mentioned, on the production team for that movie.
Yeah.
What was it like acting with her and the other people?
She
There's a lot
was
of great
great.
stars in the movie, great actors. In
Yeah,
the movie.
I've known Shohreh and Hushang forever. They're fantastic,
so funny.
and they deliver. I forget the name of the lady. There's a lady who plays the grandmother. She's fantastic.
Yeah, she was really good too. Yeah.
Tara's great. I mean, they're all great.
My friend
Chris
Sam
Ishii.
Golzari, I got to give a shout out to him. I've known him for maybe 20 years, and he's a great friend of mine. He was in there, yeah.
Sam Golzari is one of my favorite people. He played in the movie Jimmy Westwood. He
Yeah.
played the son of Mehdi the Butcher, and he did a great job. Sam's a great actor,
He is a great actor.
and he's a great musician. He's very talented.
Yeah, I've seen him perform. He has a band called Elevators, and he does solo stuff himself.
Yeah.
Very talented, and one of the kindest people you'll meet.
Super
Yeah.
sweet. So it was a great cast, and then working with Rita was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm not it's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but we actually get to kiss each other in the movie, and it was funny because my daughter, who's 9 years old, was at the screening, and at the end we were doing a Q&A, and she raised her hand, and we said, "What's your question?" And she said, "How does it feel like kissing another woman?" And I was like, "Oh my god!" And
So she asked it out loud.
She asked that
That's
question out
amazing.
loud,
And
yeah.
what did you answer?
Well, I said, it was disgusting. I said, not to be done again. No, and then I said, Rita's a fantastic lady, and I think that I found out that my wife might have prodded her along or something. But no, it's interesting for kids to see that. You know, going back to the kids, it's funny because one time I was on a TV show years ago where I played this guy who has a son. And so it's a sitcom. I mean, it was a sitcom, and then me and the son we reunite, this, that, the other, and it's just silly stuff. And when my actual son, was maybe like 4 years old, I happened to have a DVD of that show. So I sat him down. I said, "Let's watch it together," because I thought he'd have fun with it. Well, come to find out, it was traumatic. He started crying. He's going, "I thought I was your son," and I'm like, "No, this is a TV show."
Yeah,
and they don't get it.
Well, yeah, so at a certain age, they make believe that doesn't seem so make believe, so they can't differentiate with the reality and the wow.
But
So,
now
yeah.
they've come around, so they get it.
I'm sure now they get it.
Now
but
I'm
then
allowed to kiss women on the screen.
and you might get a little flack, but it's
Yeah.
probably okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm wondering if that's ever for your kids or your wife, like seeing you on screen, or what do your kids respond when they see?
They've seen me now since I was young. I mean,
Right.
I've always had my son, daughter, and nephew around a lot of my shows. And one thing that I encourage parents to do, I say, encourage your kids to do the school play, to get involved, to get in front of people,
Yeah.
because they get more and more comfortable. And now, I mean, my son just did his first play this last weekend. It was fantastic. He, every time he spoke, he was basically hamming it up, and he was funny, and he was going for it. And then later that night, there was a Persian American Cancer Institute fundraiser, UCLA fashion show.
Right, yeah, ISG, I think, helped plan that.
Yeah. And so we went to do that, and I was hosting it, and there was an auction part, and I started doing the auction, and then my son and nephew were on stage, and then they just took the mic and took over the fundraising, and it was amazing to watch. There were these two kids, and my son was yelling to people, "Okay, how much you want to bid? How much you want to bid? Come on, you can." And I'm like, God, he's so comfortable in front of 800 people, and my nephew was standing up there with him, and so it's a good thing. I think it's good for them to see you be up there, and it's good for them whether they want to be whatever profession they want to go into. It's a great thing for them to learn how to stand in front of people.
Yeah, and this is not just true in the Iranian community. We see it even in the school system, but the arts are kind of looked at as an afterthought. It's like, okay, you do all the stuff that quote unquote matters, math, science, English, whatever. And then if there's time left over, art and music. And so we see that in how curriculums are developed in schools, do things. But the arts should not be this afterthought. That's a big part of helping kids get in touch with who they are and expressing themselves. And I'm glad there's movements more towards incorporating that and making sure it's an integral part of education. But unfortunately, in Persian families, you see it a lot as, okay, don't get, they might even be afraid, I don't want them to get into that stuff, because then they might not get as much into the academic side. so they almost don't let them get into those things.
Yeah, I think it's a great way for them to also. For me, it was a great door into reading because I loved reading plays. So I would take like Shakespeare class, so I could read those plays, or I would take I would read like Tennessee Williams or whatever. I enjoyed reading plays. It's almost an easier way for you to read a story, I would think. And then you go see the play, and then you go see the movie of it, and you're like, oh wow, I see how it's all done. So definitely, I think it's something to encourage your kids to do. I've seen so many. I've been at events where they had a CEO of a company who is super successful in what they do. They go up to speak, and they're the worst speaker in the world. And I'm going, my God, someone needs to train this person on how to talk in front of an audience.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good to see that the kids have been exposed, and I hope they do get more.
Even, it's good personally. I remember reading, I forgot which book it was in, but it was talking about how when you look at Nobel Prize winners, overwhelming percentage of them also had some interest in the arts. So they would be like also a painter or did, acting or something. And it was presenting this idea that because it helps them see the world in different ways and be more creative, it allows them to, even in science, think in creative ways. So we tend to think of science as something that's just you study and you read and then you know it. But if you're going to be a creator at advanced science, you have to think a little differently by definition. And so it was showing how people who were more involved in the arts were able to likely think of things in a different way to then advance things. So it just helps them think in different ways, expands them in so many ways. So I really hope parents won't deprive their kids of those artistic opportunities to express themselves.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because we were talking at the break about this podcast I'm doing now, which is called Back to School with Maz Jobrani, and people can find it on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, all that stuff, and it's free. They should subscribe. And I've had a lot of different guests on. One of my guests was this lady. She's an artist. Her name's Azadeh Shladovsky. I always mispronounce her last name. But she was saying exactly that. She is this furniture designer / artist, and she had an experience where her daughter was, I think, 1 or 2 years old and was diagnosed with cancer, and it was very tragic. And in the process, lost her sight. And then the story goes on, and she said when that happened, and she talks about this in our podcast. She said when that happened, she started realizing that we feel with beyond our eyes, with our hands, with our ears. So she started doing art that related to that. And so she was creating this art, and she said, I was almost born again through my daughter's experience. And one of the things that she mentions in the podcast is exactly that. She said that a lot of parents think, oh, if your kid goes towards art, that's because they're going to have to go on and be an artist. And she goes, no, that it's developing a side of your brain that is important in whatever you do. And it's also about not setting any limits. That's what art is. Art is saying, here's the paint, go. Right. Make a mess, do whatever you want. And or writing a story, writing a play is here's a blank piece of paper, create a world. Right. So it's beautiful. I think it's a great thing to do because, as you said, no matter what you do in your life, first of all, it allows you, look, we all need it. It's an escape. I mean, look at all the stuff that's going on every day. There's so much tragedy and this and that and whatever. You go into a play and you zone out for a couple hours, and you see this other story. Or you go to a museum and you see the art. I mean, it's all very important. But even if you don't go on and be an artist, as you said, you might be in, if you're a creative thinker in this corporation that you work in, you're going to come up with solutions that other people aren't going to. I think that's the problem. I think a lot of times people I think people are learning more and more, but people continue to be focused on get the top grades, cross all the T's, dot all the I's. And then you end up with these followers who, when they go to college, I got to get straight A's and move on and move on and move on. And they're not at all thinking outside the box.
Absolutely. You said your kids are 11 and 9, so soon you'll, and maybe already, there's already people already think about college and which middle school to help them go to the right high school to get the right. And I just see these parents come and see me, and I tell them, your job is not to be like an academic manager. They just turn into that. They don't even have a relationship with their kids anymore outside of, did you finish this? Did you do this? Extracurriculars. And it's just this obsession with creating a good model candidate for college rather than helping to develop a good, well-rounded human being who is actually connected to themselves and connected to the world. And it's heartbreaking to see that, but I see it happening more and more as colleges are getting even more competitive, and it's just getting crazier. You just not just the good grades, you have to have all these other extracurriculars, and not just extracurriculars, one that's art focused, one that's this focused, and it's like they're not even following their passion, they're just following a recipe.
Yeah.
And a recipe is not going to create a good human being, it's just going to create a robot. And
Yeah.
so that's unfortunately what we're seeing more and more. And it's like, let your kids find their passions, like, and don't worry, okay, right now they like rocks. It doesn't, maybe they'll become a, geologist or something and study rocks, but they might also find that passion is something that's exciting, and then they'll, I can delve into a world, and let them delve into different worlds, and definitely don't deprive them of the arts. We actually have to go to another commercial break, but here with Maz Jobrani, we're talking about lots of different things, but also his movie that's out now, A Simple Wedding. You can go to simplewedding.movie to get more information. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Again, I'm joined today by Maz Jobrani, talking about his movie A Simple Wedding, which you can check out in some local theaters, which the information is at simpleweddingmovie.movie.
A Simple Wedding.movie. Yes.
Movie, but also anywhere in the world on Amazon Prime. During the break, we were chatting a bit about comedians, and me and my brother Parham, we love going to stand-up comedy shows. But also there's this, a lot of times people talk about comedians and mental health, or comedians and depression. I think when Robin Williams, the tragic death of Robin Williams, brought to a lot of people's attention, it's happened before to Chris Farley, so many others as well, but these people that make us laugh, sometimes there's a lot of pain, and it's a complicated relationship between that. Sometimes the pain is actually helping them laugh, sometimes the pain is what made them want to make people laugh. But I just wanted to get some of your thoughts on that, because you are a comedian yourself, and you get to obviously know a lot of comedians.
Yeah, I think human beings are complicated.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're happy one minute, you're sad the next, right? I mean, that's just how life is. And I think comedians, one of the reasons that there's two things that are happening. Number one is the contrast, because we are used to seeing comedians be funny.
Right.
So when you find out that they have a dark side, or they're sad, or they're depressed, or whatever it is, it's just, it's such a big clash to how we're used to seeing them. If you say your accountant was depressed, you'd be like, well, I've never seen him happy anyway. So it's like,
yeah, right.
But comedians is different. They
Yeah.
go, oh, this guy's funny all the time, because they see you for 10, 20 minutes or an hour being funny.
Right.
Then they expect you to be funny off stage. They expect you to be funny all the time. But you're a human being. You're not on all the time.
Of course.
And the other thing that I think comedians do is, it's our job to look at society, look at ourselves, and almost psychoanalyze, or not saying, but like analyze ourselves.
Yeah, of course.
Analyze society. So again, going back to the accountant's example, or a lawyer example, or whatever, the lawyer's job is to look at the contract, analyze the contract. This is what's going to be legal. This is what's not going to be legal. The comedian's job is to analyze, how do I feel about something that's going on in the world? How do I feel about something that's going on in my life? How do I feel about something that happened to me in the past? So you're constantly going around. That's how you're writing. So I think by doing that, you're constantly reminded of stuff that you're forced to go deeper and deeper. And I think all of that combines together to create human beings that, when if they don't have ways of releasing that, whether it's through meditation or exercise, or just getting a chance to breathe and decompress, then it could really go to the other extreme. And so, I mean, Robin Williams also had that Lewy body disease that was, I guess, affecting him and his brain. My friend Brody Stevens, he committed suicide last year, I believe it was. He'd been dealing with different psychological things throughout his life. So, it's definitely in our community, in the comedians community, depression, sometimes bipolar, what have you. But I think that the one thing that I think I'm seeing more of, and I don't know, I really don't know if I don't think there's been a study done or anything, but back in the day, drugs were a lot more prevalent. I run into a lot more comedians now who go, no, I don't drink, I don't smoke, and they're just drinking water at the club. And I think that at least helps a little bit to find clarity and to be able to come off that stage and just exist. because we were talking about this on the break, that people expect you to be funny. So
Sure, yeah.
it's funny to me because when I'm not on stage, I'm just kind of hanging out. And then it's funny to me because within the Persian community, people think that I have 1,000 Persian jokes ready to go. I don't. First of all, I tell people, I go, my shows are in English.
Yeah.
So people come up to me. People have come up to me before. I swear to God, people have come up to me after the show and been like, "I am so happy to see you. My children are a fan of yours, and they don't even speak Farsi." And I'm like, "Well, the show's in English, so that's maybe they understand what I'm saying." But it's funny because then they expect me to be able to tell jokes all the time, and I've had like fundraisers where people bid money for me to go join them at dinner at their house.
Yeah.
And I'm like, listen, just so you know, I'm going to be a pretty boring guest. And I think I kind of feel like I leave those fun, like twice it's happened, I think I leave and they're probably like, فکر خنده‌دار comedian didn't seem like a comedian at all. Like, are you sure he's a comedian?
Yeah. I mean, when you were talking, I had so many things were going through my head that people are complex, and allowing for yourself, but also for others to be complex. You're a comedian, you're hilarious, but you're also a human being, which means you have every other aspect of being a human being too. We all can be funny, but then that's your part, and you have this art and skill there, but you're upset sometimes, you're sad sometimes. So if they see you on the street, I hope people will give you that space. They're big fans. I'm sure they come to you, give you lots of kind words, but to be a whole person. And I think that's sometimes what even happens, obviously with celebrities, but even just in families, like, oh, that's so-and-so, she's always happy in our family, she's the one that makes everyone feel good, where she has pain, she has sadness, and we have to give her that space to express those things. If she doesn't, she's going to hold on to it, and it could turn into all these other, depression and drug use, and maybe even ultimately suicide, because we don't give people the space to be full human beings who are going to have good days, bad days. And that's a big thing for me. Also, this positivity movement. I think it's great to try to be more positive, to be aware of those things. But besides, there's this obsession with happiness that you're not supposed to ever be sad. You're not allowed to have a bad day. And that's not good, because people are going to feel sad. They're going to have bad days. And then they start to internalize like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Or look, everyone else is so happy all the time. Only I'm sad. When everyone's sad sometimes, but we're hiding it from each other. And so I think being more genuine and open and recognizing the complexity of being a human being is so important to realize.
Absolutely. I'm pretty grumpy in the morning. So there's been some mornings I wake up and I get up and I see the kids watching TV. What are you guys doing watching TV? Turn off the TV. Go make your bed. And I'm starting yelling stuff, and they're like, "You're so grumpy this morning." And I'm like, "Just give me an hour, I'll be good."
Yeah, right.
And then the next hour I'm dancing with them.
Right,
so that's just how we are.
Exactly. And I think that's the problem of not thinking we're supposed to always be a certain way in any way. It's going to get in the way of us being just human and happy and living a good life. But I think with comedians, it might be exaggerated. One, they might be drawn to it. They probably were the person that made everyone laugh. As I was saying to start this off, I think there is a pain that sometimes makes them want to make everyone happy too. At times, even some comedians, I've heard them say, like my mom was sad all the time and I would try to make her happy. And that's kind of how it started, which it could be good and help create their art, but there's some pain there that if they don't deal with could hurt them in many different ways as well.
Absolutely. They say that we're on that stage because we're trying to get the people's approval because we didn't have the approval as a kid, right? Yeah. So, I mean, there's probably some of that involved. There
probably is, yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people, most people, I think, had those situations with their parents. Not that parents don't love you, but it's just that as a kid, first of all, generationally speaking, when we were younger, just parents weren't constantly saying like, Farid Jun, come here, let me talk to you. Let me tell you how much I love you today. I'm going to tell you 10 times that I love you.
My dad would actually say it a lot.
Would he?
I'm pretty lucky. Yeah,
look at you.
He's pretty expressive. He's a very, But I know what you mean. In general, it's not the stare, especially from the man, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they loved you, but they weren't going around telling you they loved you all day long.
Sure.
And so I think no matter what happens, like, I always reflect on my childhood. My father, I think, instilled a lot of confidence in me, gave us a lot of love. And my mom sacrificed a lot for us, and so I try to be objective about them, and I love them. And then in my stand-up, I'll make fun of like how rigid they were with me, because ultimately they were also the ones who said, "Don't go into this career. Do something that has a reputable thing. Go be a lawyer. All that stuff." So I kind of go back and forth in terms of jabbing them in that way, but I say, listen, off stage, I'll tell you. The truth is that they really were very supportive in many ways, because there came a time when I decided to do what I wanted to do, and there was no stopping me. That's where I was going. Yeah, and they came on board with it, and now all these years later, I mean, it's not even an issue anymore. But yeah, I think part of you're constantly, fighting back with, like you said, your childhood or the community. I even say on stage now, I go, when I first started doing this, it wasn't just my mom and dad I was rebelling against. I was rebelling against the community, because our community, I think, looked down upon it, and to them, being a comedian was like being a drug dealer. They're like, oh my God, So definitely, I think we worked through our issues.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, even about your parents, and you're saying how, you on stage you'll share, and of course, I'm sure at times exaggerate. I said it so person exaggerate some of their, aspects, but that's because also people are complex. Your parents, I always tell this because people come into therapy and sometimes they'll have this feeling of, okay, we start talking about their childhood, and then they say some things about their parents that aren't so good. Oh, they did this, and then they feel this guilt of no, but they've done so many good things. How could I even complain? But I try to tell them this is the complexity of life, is that your parents, I'm sure they did thousands of amazingly good things for you, but it doesn't mean that some of the things they did also didn't hurt you. And we have to look at that. Pain is real, and we have to look at that. Doesn't mean we're judging them. We're trying to understand what you went through. So I'm sure your parents did so many good things, but then also on stage you'll share some of those things that are funny or whatnot, because that's what people could relate to and connect to. But people are complex, so your parents aren't all good or all bad. They did a lot of wonderful things, but there's some things that also, you realize now, maybe even contributed to your comedy, but, we're not so good as well.
Absolutely. And I think part of what we do on stage, too, is to take real situations and exaggerate them to make them funny. Because if you just told the situation the way it was, you might get a chuckle. But if you really go over the board with it, then I think people laugh, and I think people relate. So when you talk about I do a joke about how immigrant parents don't play with their kids, because once they get you to America, they feel their job is done. Now, whether you're Iranian or Mexican or Chinese or whatever, I think we all kind of have a similar background in that. I remember when I was a kid, there were some dads who would show up at the playground or at the baseball game and play catch with their sons. My dad didn't even know what baseball was, much less put on a mitt and trying to play catch with me.
Right.
So it's just not part of the culture. They get you here and they go, now go play. So when you talk about it, it's great when people laugh, because then you go, oh, it happened to you too. It happened to you too, and we are now. We're all sympathizing with one another, and I think it's a therapy in a way.
Exactly, because I think that laugh is also born from that pain that we're sharing, that you're now expressing in this way. It actually reminds me of just 2 days ago was the funeral for Kobe Bryant. And it was very sad, and I was bawling my eyes out watching it. But then those few jokes, some of them were very funny, but you feel that release in the crowd, because it's like that tension and that sadness, and then when there's that moment to laugh and express it, it comes out in a much more intense way. So when you share that pain of being a child of an immigrant, and some of you are saying they felt like, oh, their job was done, but also I think what people feel in that moment is that we know it was such a struggle to get here and to live here that they didn't really have the time and luxury, to always play with the kids, because they had so much going on. And so I think people connect to that pain, and it comes out as this really deep laugh. Sometimes, you laugh from a deeper place.
Yeah.
And so I think when you can connect to people's pain like that, it's therapeutic for you, but also for the person who's hearing the jokes.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I was watching the Kobe thing too, and you're absolutely right. Like, unfortunately, I've been in a few situations where there's been memorials and stuff, and when somebody does say something funny, it's so important, because you like you said, we need it. We need laughter in our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, you just turn on the news, and from one piece to the next to the next to the next, you're like, oh my God, the meteor may as well just hit us. Because nothing's going the way it should be. So
yeah. Well, let's go to another commercial break. I'm here with Maz Jobrani again, talking about lots of different things, but including his movie, A Simple Wedding. Go check it out. You're listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Joined again by Maz Jobrani. Go check out his movie, A Simple Wedding. Go to simpleweddingmovie.movie. I'm going to get it right by tomorrow.
You're going to get it right.
Which will be late.
Farid Holakouee.
Saying all the names wrong. But people can check you out on that. Also, we mentioned the Back to School with Maz Jobrani podcast.
Yeah.
Check that out. And also, you're touring at all times. I mean, at mazjobrani.com, they can get more.
Yeah, mazjobrani.com. They can see the upcoming show dates. I'm all over the country. I'm all over the world. I'll be in Toronto. I was just in Vancouver. I'll be in Ottawa. I'll be in New York. LA. I'm going to be in May. I'm going to be at the Pasadena Ice House.
Cool.
That's always a fun show because a lot of the Armenians come out.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
so you have your Armenian contingency, you got your Iranians, you got everybody. It's fantastic, and it's an excuse to go to Rafi's place.
There
up
you go.
Yeah,
one of the best Persian restaurants in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Me and my brother have seen you live a lot of times at Comedy Store, Laugh Factory. I've actually never seen you at the Ice House. Maybe we'll have to come check that one out.
Those are all great clubs. I mean, on the west side, you've got the Comedy Store, Laugh Factory, the Improv. Those are places we go. We do 20 minutes,
right?
And people should just go out, whether I'm on there or not, or whoever. It's a great way to go see comedy. You see 4 or 5 different comedians, and you get different types and styles, and it's just very different than going, let's say, to a movie or something.
Right.
So it's a great option that a lot of people haven't even thought about when they go to live comedy. And then when I do things like the Ice House or Flappers or Hermosa Comedy Magic or Irvine Improv, those are where I'm headlining and doing a whole hour. I'll still have 2 or 3 other comedians on there, but it's my longer set. So just depending, and it's all, I put it all on mazjobrani.com. People can follow me at Maz Jobrani, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and I'll let them know of upcoming shows as well over there.
Instagram, you post a lot of funny stuff, family stuff. Also, I like when you post the different cities you go to, and sometimes you'll post a picture, like, I think you were like Larry Bird when you were in Boston. You just do kind of some funny little
Photoshop.
So check out his social media as well. Can you tell us about some upcoming projects? Anything you're working on right now?
Yeah, first of all, my Netflix special is still there. It's called Immigrant. So if people have Netflix or if they're getting it illegally from their children, they can go ahead and watch Immigrant on Netflix. And as a matter of fact, I'm hoping to sell another special soon. So the more you watch the Netflix Immigrant on Netflix, the more likely that I might be able to get it on Netflix again. And as a matter of fact, I tell people, I go, you don't even have to watch it. Just turn it on and vacuum. I don't care. Just have it run so people think that we're watching it. But that's still there. And then I'm working on an animation show
cool.
that was, Courtney Cox from Friends. She and some writers approached me. They'd written an animation show about a fictional foreign country, and there's these immigrants who move from that country to America, and they love America, and America doesn't necessarily love them back.
Oh wow! So it's totally fantasy then. Right?
Totally, exactly. So it's a fun animation show, and we are putting the cast together and going to be putting what's called an animatic pilot together for Fox.
Oh, cool.
So fingers crossed. We'll see what happens with that.
That sounds really interesting. And, I mentioned total fantasy, but how real that is of what's going on now. But, on my show, I talk about racism. I talk about psychological issues, and I hope it makes an impact. But we were talking before about the importance of art. And art can do something that you can't just do in a talk because it can hit people on a much deeper level and get them to see the humanity of what's going on, how people are actually affected by what's happening. So I think that's great that it seems like it's tackling a social issue.
Absolutely. I think it's important. I think that's how you become accepted in America by people who aren't from your background. Because like I always say Iranians, we know how great we are. We're like, we're this, we're that. But in all honesty, you go to many places that don't have an Iranian population, and they don't even know who we are. Yeah. They don't even know the difference between an Iranian and a Saudi, and they don't know the difference. They don't care to know the difference, and they don't care to know that we ourselves, we're successful, we're doctors, lawyers. They don't care about that stuff. Right. All they see is the negative stuff. So if you can almost in a very subtle way, if you can introduce a TV show or a movie or whatever it is, where they go and they see it and they laugh and they enjoy it, and then their second thought is, oh, that guy was Iranian. What? That's that's how you make. And that's how cultures have done that, from the black community to Latinos to whatever. So it's important. It's very important for us to hopefully get shows from people from our backgrounds in these places. Yeah,
and speaking of identity, it's funny. It's 2020, and I think it was for the 2010 census you had done that video. So that was 10 years ago?
That was 10 years ago.
That was so funny. Me and my brother still say some of those lines you said, like, just joking to you.
Just joking to you.
Come. Like, you had a lot of these really, it was just hilarious. But I can't believe that was 10 years ago. And it's sad to see that we haven't really advanced in 10 years, because still there's all these issues about, it seems like they might not have a Middle Eastern box on the census, and you have to write it in still, which is...
I think, I was just talking to somebody, there's movements from the community, our community, to encourage people to write in Iranian under, I think there's a box that says race, and it's like it says white and then black and then it's got a few different categories, but they say no matter what you hit, make sure you write in Iranian underneath that so that we can be counted. Now, there's a bunch of different issues. One is there's some theory of, will they actually count it, whether you write it or not. But the bigger thing is I think a lot of people don't, it's hard for people to see the benefits of filling those out, because I think a lot of people are very skeptical.
Of course.
I don't want to tell the government any more than I need to. But the fact is, if we're able to, between the Iranian community, they wanted to create a Middle Eastern North African MENA category, which I think would be great, because then we bring our numbers together with us and other people from that part of the world. And if we're able to show, I mean, I've read statistics that said something along the lines of where something like 3% of the population, or maybe 4% of the population, when you combine Iranians, Arabs, everybody from that Middle Eastern North African region, and yet on television you see maybe 1% representation, and when you see us, you see terrorists and tyrants.
Probably less than 1%, and less than a fraction of a percent of who we are as far as the different roles.
Yeah, and the thing that people need to know is that there's a lot of benefits beyond that come with getting that minority status. If you can get to a minority status, then there's a lot of things, like, for example, I think if there's hospitals have to have translators who speak that language, so that, like, God forbid your grandmother or grandfather or somebody goes to the hospital, they don't speak English, well, they're going to have Farsi speakers there by mandate. They have to be there. There's certain funds that go to these different communities. So there's benefits to being known in this country. And also, let's not kid ourselves, political power that you gain if you're able to go, like, the next time they do a travel ban, or they stop people at the border because they're Iranian, because it says Iranian in your passport and you're American. If we have shown that we have 500,000 or 1 million or whatever that number is, then when you go to a senator or a congressman, or and you say, hey, this community is upset about this thing, they're going to listen to you. But right now, our numbers, I think from that time I did that video to encourage people to fill out the census, I think our numbers went down. We went from like 350,000 to like 320,000. So the census is coming out this next month, and I highly encourage people online to do it. I also think that the young people, that you probably have a lot of young listeners, I would encourage them to go to their parents, grandparents, whoever else is there, and go, we need to be counted. I'm filling this out. Take a grassroots approach. If you're part of the student group at UCLA, USC, wherever, say, hey, this is our chance, so I'm going to go tell my parents we're doing this. Because let's face it, a lot of parents and grandparents are saying, nah, but don't get involved.
Exactly. Like you said, I mean, of course, especially in the U.S. right now, there is this fear of identifying yourself as Middle Eastern. Could it have some backlash in some way? So people would rather just leave it blank or not get into that. And there was a great book I talked about last year, and I was lucky to have her on the show via telephone. Nedem Maghbouleh, who's a professor of sociology, wrote it called The Limits of Whiteness, and it was talking a lot about race and Iranian Americans and how technically we're considered white, like legally, but then our experiences, we don't feel white at all. And so that's why it's so important for us to be represented and counted as we are. But it creates all these dilemmas, and it's hard for us to be identified. And it was supposed to be on the census. I'd read over the last few years about these movements trying to put it on the census, that MENA, Middle East and North Africa, but it's now off, I guess, which is kind of heartbreaking that still it's not there, and we're supposed to just be considered white, which clearly we don't get treated as white when we're detained and treated in certain ways.
No.
But legally, we're just kind of we're supposed to just blend in and as if we don't exist.
Well, there's this argument that I think people in our community make. Some people go, "Why are you, trying to stand out? We are white. We this, that, the other." But I go, look, like you said, our experience is not that. When we first came from Iran to America, we were fleeing the current government, and then they took hostages in Iran, and then suddenly us in America started getting beaten up and called names. And then later on, every 5-10 years, something keeps happening. And no matter, even this most recent thing where we almost went to war with Iran, no matter where you stand on that, I heard of a lot of Iranian American kids in schools that were starting to get, I think it's quick. People start calling you terrorists and coming after you. So you might think you're white, but wait till things happen and you realize you're not. And so I think that there's a certain thing about having this community be recognized. And also, look, we can learn from other communities, whether it's Filipinos or Indians or Chinese or whoever else is in this country, African Americans who have taken their background and made it a thing of pride and said, we are going to show that we have numbers.
Right.
That's all it is. You got to show you have numbers, because if you I mean, there's a reason why every Democratic debate they're trying to, they're speaking a few words in Spanish.
Yeah.
Because they want the Latino vote, because they know it's a big vote.
Right.
So can you imagine in 10, 15, 20 years if we had shown that we have enough power in this country where the candidates at a debate are saying things in Farsi?
Right.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, but they have to know the numbers are there to know that it's worth. Unfortunately, they're pandering, but look, we want to be represented and be counted, and that's the only way we can get counted.
Yeah.
I do want to let you go because I know you have to head out. But you talked about recognition as a community, as a culture, and definitely want to acknowledge what you've done, because you were really the first comedian that we all saw that was Iranian and actually becoming into the mainstream. And, you had that Persian like a cat and this kind of things but actually, which is funny and cute, but then actually had something where it's like, oh, people are saying Persian or they're talking about it.
Yeah. And
so I think you've done a lot to help bring recognition to our community. We're all very proud of the work you've done. And so thank you for that.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you. And it's been great to, I always say I was a fan of your father's, and I found out that you and your brother, I'm a fan of the whole family.
Thank you. Well, we appreciate that and the support you've always had for us, and we're always here to support you. So come back someday soon, and we'll talk some more.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Farid.
All right, so that was Maz Jobrani. Check out his movie, A Simple Wedding. Go to asimplewedding.movie for more information. Thank you again to Maz. Let's take another commercial break. Welcome back. Big thank you again to Maz Jobrani, who did have to leave but was here for the show. Check out his movie, A Simple Wedding. It's playing in some small city as far as numbers go across the country, but also available on Amazon Prime. Go to asimplewedding.movie. I think I said that right 3 out of 20 times that I said it. Anyway, we talked about a lot of different things with Maz, and I appreciated hearing his different thoughts on various topics. But one that came up that I wanted to talk a bit more about was the arts in general, but letting our kids do what they want or become who they are and who they want to be. A lot of times parents, we think we have to make our kids become good people and that we have this model for what a good person is, and we try to get them to fit that mold. We essentially try to just make them, stretch them, pull them in different ways to become what we think a good human, good person is, especially in the Persian community, someone who will get respect for what they're doing and who they are and acting in a certain way. And so we try to stretch them and pull them into that mold, which unfortunately just leads to a lot of negative things, from the pressure we put on them, but also the messages we're giving to our kids that who they are is not good enough itself, that they need to be something different from who they are, or that they can't be certain things, even if maybe that's who they are deep down. And this is unfortunately a very painful consequence that many parents put onto their kids. And what I always tell parents is we sometimes think we have to stretch our kids into these molds of what a good human is. But first of all, we don't really know, and there isn't just one way of being a good human, but more that we're supposed to focus on the aspect of our child that is who they are. And so you're given a seed when you have a child, and just like any seed, it's supposed to grow into the plant that it is. It's supposed to express that potential which is within itself. But unless you're a botanist, you probably look at a seed, you don't know what kind of plant it's supposed to become. And so you're given this baby, this child, and you don't know, and you can't dictate what kind of plant it's supposed to be. That potential is already within it. All you are supposed to do is to help provide the right environment for that seed to grow into whatever plant, flower, tree that it is supposed to be, that it has within itself. You can't pull it to become a flower if you think that's the right way to be, or to become tall like a tree because you think that's better. You have to just allow that seed to reach its full potential, meaning that you give it the love that it needs, the nurturing that it needs, the opportunities it needs, and also the space to grow in the way it wants to grow. So if it's a tree, it might need more space, and you start to see that it needs that space. If it's a flower, maybe it needs certain types of water. So over time, you might adjust the way you provide that environment for the child, but it's in response to who that child is and is being, rather than what you think he or she should be or shouldn't be. Oh, no, you shouldn't be so colorful. That's going to get attention. That's not good. So become less colorful. Oh, you should be taller this way, or you should be wider this way, or whatever it might be. That's not going to work. And you're just going to stretch them to become something they're not, which is more likely going to lead to them being hurt in a psychological kind of a way. So we have to see our children for what they are, these beautiful seeds of potential, not something that we create in our likeness or what we want them to become. I was actually just talking to a good friend of mine yesterday, and he was talking about his son and trying to help him to grow in the best way that he can. And we're talking about different things and how parents at times, for example, want their kids to be really confident or really outgoing, or be a public speaker, or be a this or be a that, which we can understand. You're going to have these desires for your children. But what I was telling him was what's most important is that whoever his son is, if you want your son even to be confident in really the way of genuinely self-confident about who he is, you have to make him feel good about who he is, whatever that is. So if he is, let's say, more quiet, don't make him feel bad for being more quiet. If he is outgoing and silly in a certain way, let him be that way as well. So the best way you can make or help your child be confident in who they are is by showing them that whoever they are, that's okay and lovable and worth your love and respect and worth a lot, and give them that good feeling for being however they are, rather than saying, oh, I want you to be more this way, so let me push you this way. You should be more like this. No, you should go to a party and talk to everyone. Okay, but if that's not who they are, maybe that's okay, and not everyone needs to do that. Again, there isn't one good type of flower or plant. There's different plants and different flowers, all beautiful and good in different ways, but we want to make sure whatever type of plant your child is becoming, they feel good about who that is. And another aspect of that is being aware of ourselves and our own childhood. There's a great book by Daniel Siegel called Parenting Inside Out, and other books talk about this because it's so important to realize our own issues, our own things that happen in our childhood and what we've carried forward, the wounds we have from that. Because without trying, consciously or unconsciously, you're going to pass those on to your kids. So if you were a shy kid and let's say you got bullied a little bit, then if you see a little bit of shyness in your own child, you're going to react very negatively to it, because you're, no, you can't be that way. You gotta be strong and defend yourself, because it's bringing up your own feelings of, gosh, it felt so bad to get bullied, and I felt so powerless, and I hated that feeling, and I always wished I could have overcome those bullies. And now when you see your child, and of course, especially if it's a biological child, might even look like you, but it's your child on top of all that, and you're going to see a lot of yourself in him or her no matter what, you start to project that and identify with that and think, oh, I'm not going to let you have to suffer in that way. So it feels like it's coming from a place of love. If you're conscious of it, sometimes you might not even be aware of it, but you're trying to make your child become something to compensate for something that you went through and you experienced. So I don't want them to have the experience I had, so I'm going to push them in this way. And so this is why, as a parent, it's so important to come to terms with your own childhood and the issues that you've dealt with. I kind of joked with Maz about this, how we kind of bring everything back to childhood, and therapists can get made fun of for this, saying, oh, it's about my mom or it's about my dad, because we hear that so much. But so often it is related to the things we experienced as a child. We carry that psychology and that psyche with us going forward. If you felt bad about a certain thing, you very likely still feel bad about it. People will have issues that happened when they were a kid, and they still won't get over it 50 years later if they haven't faced it, or it still affects them in some way, even if they've tried to deal with it. You might go to therapy, doesn't mean the issue disappears, but you might be better at dealing with that issue. So we have to be aware of what we've dealt with and what we're carrying with us, to not put that onto our kids as a burden. We don't want to dump that pain onto them and have them now carry the load. We have to deal with that ourselves, deal with that load ourselves, deal with those issues and what we've been through. From our own therapy, from our first just understanding, we can get better. So the first step is to look in to see what's there, because whether you are aware of it or not, there's ways that you think a person should be and shouldn't be, and there's experiences you had that you didn't like or did like that will affect the way you'll try to make your kid become or not become. Don't be shy. I want you to be strong. And so it's interesting because if you say, don't be shy, I want you to be strong, unfortunately, what you're actually doing is be putting them down, make them feel bad about who they are, and they're actually now going to be more likely to get bullied or not be able to stand up for themselves because you're teaching them who you are isn't good. So now if someone else comes along and says, hey, you're not good for whatever reason and makes fun of them, they might think this makes sense. This resonates because I even get that at home. So you might start bullying your kid in a way to try to protect them from bullying, which is ironic. But if anything, it's just going to make it more likely that they get bullied and put down. So what I actually told my friend yesterday about this topic was, I work with families and they say, I don't want my kid to get bullied, or I want my kid to stand up to themselves. And I say, well, for themselves. And I say, well, can your child stand up to you? And very often they realize, they can't. I don't let them, or I react really negatively to that. And so it doesn't mean we let them become the dictator and say whatever they want and do whatever they want. But we do give them the space to disagree with us, to let us know what they're feeling, to let us know if they're upset. Even if though it's your kid, you want to hug and kiss them because they're so cute and you love them so much. But if you hug and kiss them in a way they don't like, they have the right to tell you, mommy, that was too much, or I don't want to hug right now, or I don't want to kiss right now. And we show them that that's okay for them to say that. They can let us know what they want and don't want. It's their body. It's their person. They can decide what happens to it. So we can show them from a young age that who you are is okay, that what you want is okay and worth asking and saying and speaking up for. But we can only do that if we allow them to be themselves and don't already assume we know what they should be and what they shouldn't be, and to put that pressure on them. So we allow our child to grow into that beautiful plant flower that they're supposed to become, not get in their way, and be aware of the things that we carry within us and how that might affect who we think they're supposed to become, and the ways we might actually take away from their specialness, their uniqueness, and not allow them to be loved for who they are. All right, let's go into our last commercial break. Studio number 310-441-0555. You're listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's go to a caller. Radio Hamra, you're on the air.
Hello, Dr. Farid Holakouee.
Hi,
How are you?
Good. Thanks for calling.
Thanks so much for having me on call.
Your voice is kind of cutting out. I don't know if it's something about the reception or how you're holding the phone, or if we're on speaker, if you could take it off, but we can't quite hear you clearly.
Is it okay now?
That sounds better. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sir. First, I thank you so much for your very informative program.
Oh, thank you.
I really enjoy and appreciate all of your talk and all of the program that you have.
Thank you very much.
I have a question regarding my son. I have a son that he's older than 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And from the time that he was in high school, he started using marijuana. And since this is unfortunately normalizing this program or normalizing this type of thing in the state and so many places in the United States and in other places, it really has a very bad impact on him. He has achieved so many great things in his life. However, this is something that really concerns us about his future and about his life, or the way that he's thinking, or sometimes he gets very angry or gets emotional. Even though we take him to some centers to put it away, he put it away for a while, and it seems that he started again.
And maybe I know
want your insight.
Sure. I know I still said for you we're hearing you too quietly. Now it's a little bit loud. Sorry to kind of go back and forth with you because I'm almost getting a little bit of feedback when I'm hearing you. But okay, so your son has been dealing with smoking marijuana since high school. Or that's something that you noticed, and you're very concerned about it. And you're saying you guys have tried to help him to stop. Now let me ask you something. Does he say he wants to stop smoking?
Yes.
He says he wants to stop too.
It seems that he's telling me that, he said that, or it's difficult for him, but he doesn't show any interest to stop it. Or he told me that he wanted to stop it, but he stopped it for a while and then he started again.
Okay. Well, so the first thing, I mean, when we're talking about change of any kind, but especially when we're talking about substance use, and I don't know if he has an addiction or not, but we always hear this in addiction, is that you have to first acknowledge there's a problem and the person has to want to stop. And so it seems like he's at best ambivalent, meaning he has mixed feelings. He maybe wants to stop or he's not sure. And so if you're putting this pressure on him to stop, but he doesn't want to, it's kind of like you're trying to push a boulder up a hill and you're trying to do the work yourself. But really what we need is that if he wants to go up that hill, that he's going to walk himself up the hill. And so we have to find out first where he's at. I know you want him to stop, and to you it's very black and white that he needs to stop smoking marijuana because it's bad for him. But until you really understand it from his perspective of what he thinks about it and also what he wants to do, you're probably going to face a lot of resistance and just make a lot of effort and use a lot of energy, but not get very far, and maybe get further away from him, not closer to him.
In some points, you are right. I mean, for a while he moved back, but he told me that he's upset. He wanted to do it. He wanted to stop it.
I don't know why the sound is so. It's very hard to make out what you're saying. I felt like you said something like he says something he wants to stop or something about his ambivalence, but it is hard to hear you. I'll let you speak again. If there's anything you can do, again, if you're on speaker, take it off of the speaker phone. But if not, I don't know. We can try again, but it might be hard for me to.
No, I am not on the speaker. I'm not on the speaker.
Okay.
I don't know what to do. I'm trying to talk as loud as possible.
And maybe actually a little bit quieter might be okay now, I think, because like I said, there might be some feedback. I know I asked you to speak more loudly, but a little quieter might work better now.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So I really don't know what to do. We take him to the center. We take him to psychologists. He has been under supervision of psychologists for a long time, and on and off we take him. However, I really don't know what strategy I can use to help him to realize the danger that he might face with.
So, here's the thing, like I was saying, we need him to want to stop. I know you want him to stop, but if he doesn't want to stop, he won't. And I know you're saying there's the dangers and these things, and there possibly is. Marijuana, the way I look at it, is that it's not all good or all bad. If someone is not smoking, I'm not going to recommend that they start. There could be, the research shows it could have some negative effects on the brain, especially the younger you start. But at the same time, it doesn't mean if someone smokes marijuana, their life has to be ruined. And sometimes parents, especially Iranian parents, because of their own ideas about marijuana and other drugs, might think that his life has to be ruined. So a few things, and I might talk a little bit more. I usually, of course, want it to be a conversation, but because we're having some issues with the audio, I'll share some thoughts with you, and maybe we'll try again and see how it goes. So if one is, we want to understand, what does the marijuana mean for him or do for him? If you tell me he smokes sometimes with his friends, okay. If he has to smoke every night or else he can't sleep, that concerns me more. If he's smoking all throughout the day, that concerns me. If it's keeping him from doing things, those things, are things we have to worry about. So first, we don't want to look at it as black and white. And for a lot of people, if you just think marijuana is this bad thing, it's just bad no matter what. So there's no, okay, maybe he smokes in a way that's, you still might not like it, but it's not that big of a deal. Or no, really it is a big deal and we have to be concerned. So we have to look at what role it's playing in his life. What does it serve? What does it get in the way of in his life? That's important. And then the other thing related to that is, well, what's driving him or leading to him smoking? Is it just a social thing he does here and there? Does he have some severe anxiety or depression that's pushing him towards it? That's also very important, because what we're looking at is the marijuana, even if it is problematic, it might be more a symptom rather than the actual disease. Maybe he's dealing with these things. And they become chicken or the egg, because sometimes someone is anxious and they turn to alcohol or turn to marijuana or other drugs. And then now they also have an addiction, and that itself could be a problem. So I don't want to say the marijuana can't be a problem, but we want to look at a bigger picture issue or a bigger picture approach, which is that we're not just focused on marijuana. Because the way I'm hearing you talk, and I don't want to assume this, but based on what you said and what I've seen with some other parents, is they just think marijuana is the problem. We have to get rid of marijuana. Once we get rid of marijuana, his life's going to be good. And it's possible that's what's going on, but usually there's much more to the story than that. And if we're not looking at what else is going on, as I said, what might be pushing him towards smoking or why he uses, the why is very important. We won't really understand him better to really be able to help him. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, that makes sense. So what question you have? Any question that you have that you want me to
I mean, that's why
respond?
I'm wondering, what do you see as far as how he, do you feel like it's really interfering with his life in a very negative way, the marijuana use?
Yes. I
Okay.
think that he cannot sleep at night, like the whole night is up, and he's athletic. He's athlete. He's constantly he has gained several state championships. He's very active in terms of bodybuilding, running, all types of sports. He's doing very well. Not all types, like martial arts, like black belts, and all of those things. However, these are the things that concerning me regarding the continuation of his education.
Yeah.
He's a college student right now, but the way that he's moving forward, I think, is very difficult for him to focus. I know he has ADHD. However, I don't think that would be just the only reason for difficulty to having enough sleep or cannot sleep or continue his education, because I know so many people in my family that have ADHD, but in terms of education also they are successful.
Right.
But just want to tell you that I also get separated from his father when he was like 7 years old. However, both of us are very supportive. Our relationship is good, and we try to have a good relationship to support our son.
Okay. Now let me
there is
stop
no
you there.
problem between
Okay.
us.
So let me stop you there. When you say you're concerned about his education, concerned about things, do you know how he feels about how his life is going? Like, is he worried about those things? Is he unhappy about his life, or does he feel like, no, it's okay, my life is going exactly like I want?
I think he feel okay about himself. However, even though if he's concerned, he's not a talkative child. He doesn't show that. If he usually doesn't talk honestly.
Yeah.
About
Well, so that's the
his own
thing.
feelings.
Yeah, I mean, and of course he's 18, and so he likely won't be so open communicating with you anyway. But I want you to be aware of how you communicate with him, because if he feels like every conversation revolves around, why are you smoking? Why don't you stop smoking? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with your life? All these things. He's not gonna.
No.
Well, okay.
No.
I'm glad that's not the case. But if he feels
No,
that
no.
you're aware of the marijuana is the biggest issue, and you're so focused on him in a negative way, and even I feel it in how you talk. I get you're concerned about him, but there's a worry and an anxiety in how you talk about him. If he feels that from you, even if you ask him how he's doing, and he's not okay, he's going to tell you he's okay, life's good. Mom, why do you make everything a big deal? Why do you care so much? I'm 18, let me have fun. But maybe he's concerned too. And so you're saying he doesn't say much, and that can at times make you feel like I have to connect to him by asking him questions, by getting him to say something. But if you don't give him the space to tell you how he's doing and how he's feeling, you'll never know. And my concern is that he actually isn't feeling so good about life and certain things that are happening in his life, but he's not able to share that with you because he's already waiting for you to judge him. He's waiting for you to tell him it's not okay, or he's doing a bad thing in his life. And what I always tell parents is you want to connect, and it's not just with parents, with anyone, you want to connect with him at his pain, meaning that if he's not feeling good at his life, about his life, that's how we want to connect with him. That's how you have to get in, where he's like, yeah, Mom, I haven't gone back to school, and I think I should, or I haven't gone for a year, or I stopped going to college, or whatever it is that's going on that he's not feeling good about. And then when he says that, we don't judge him for it or say, see, I told you, or the marijuana, or the this or the that. We say, yeah, I can see how you're not feeling good. How can I help you? And you let him tell you.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
This is how I always tell
Good.
him that support even though this is difficult, but it still is okay. Anything, any problem, we just wanted to help him. I never speak. I always try to be calm and kind.
Okay, I hope
and
so.
Supportive.
Like I said, though, when
supportive.
I'm talking to you about it, I get that you're worried about him, but it feels like there's a stress and an anxiety there that I'm saying he's probably picking up on. So I'm glad you're telling him that, whatever is going on, we can help you and it's fine, which it is. But you want to make sure he feels that too. That if he tells you, Mom, let's just say he said, Mom, I hate my life. I feel like I'm not doing it. And he might not feel this way, but I'm just giving you an example that you don't make him feel like, it's such a bad thing, that you make him feel okay about that. And so we have to give him that space, which is easier said than done. But I would also recommend to you to not make the marijuana the biggest focus. Don't get obsessed with the marijuana.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Because it seemed like that was the thing you were most worried about, was that.
Because after a while, actually, during the time we go to doctor, we noticed that he started trying other stuff too.
Well, and that's my point.
what
So
was concerning
that's
me.
what I'm saying about, if we focus on the marijuana as the disease, we don't realize that the marijuana might be a symptom. Okay, so he stopped smoking marijuana, but then he drinks more. Or he stopped smoking marijuana, but now he plays 10 hours of video games to compensate with how he's feeling, right? So I'm more worried about what's going on deeper. And that's why I'm saying don't make it you took him to doctors and things about the marijuana, and it does seem like that was more about what you wanted than what he wanted. And that's why I'm saying don't make the marijuana a focus. Because even I work with families or I work with teenagers, and you'll see sometimes they'll say, yeah, my mom or my dad, all they care about is if I smoked marijuana or not. I go out of the house and I come home and I look, they're just looking at me, checking my eyes, seeing if they smell anything. It's as if they're just like drug enforcement officers. I'm not even a person anymore. It's just, did I smoke or not? And it takes away from the relationship. And of course, they're going to start avoiding you. They come home and they don't want to see you, or, they come home and they don't want to talk to you about their day, because even sometimes, the parents will assume they smoked when they didn't. Oh, your eyes are a little bit red. You must have smoked. And then, maybe they didn't even smoke that day. And now they're like, okay, even when I don't, they punish me for it. So I would change the focus from marijuana to how he's doing. How is your son doing? How does he feel? And that doesn't mean if you ask him these questions, he's going to tell you immediately, but make that more your focus. Don't even think about the marijuana and getting him to stop, because you can't.
Okay.
Even if you want him to stop smoking, if he doesn't want to, it doesn't matter. So focus more on his life and well-being and how he's doing, and just creating a relationship with him. And don't worry, he's 18. He's got plenty of time to do whatever it is he wants to do. So let that take the pressure off of you that by, now, tomorrow, this week, we have to fix the problem. You have time. And slowly you'll be able to hopefully connect with him and see what's going on. But we can shift the focus from just the marijuana to just more about, we care about how he's doing. Now, I mentioned time, and actually I'm out of time now, so I do have to end our conversation. But thank you for calling. Maybe another time you can call, we can have a longer conversation.
Thank you so very much. I always love you and love your program.
Oh, you're so kind.
And all of good advice. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It was nice talking to you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. So thank you to Ghazala here in the studio, and also to Maz Jobrani, who joined me today. Check out his movie, A Simple Wedding. I just started some rumors there. You've been listening to In Session with Dr. Farid Holakouee. Have a wonderful day.